right, welcome back in Live Now. I'm Austin Westfall. President Trump suing the Wall Street Journal and its owners, including Rupert Murdoch, on Friday, seeking at least $10 billion in damages over the newspaper's report that Trump in 2003 sent Jeffrey Epstein a birthday greeting that included a sexually suggestive drawing and a reference to secrets that they shared. Trump filing the lawsuit in federal court in the Southern District of Florida against Dow Jones, News Corp, Rupert Murdoch, and two Wall Street Journal reporters, accusing the defendants of defamation and saying that they acted with malicious intent that caused him overwhelming financial and reputational harm. Eric Faddis is a criminal defense attorney. There's a lot to understand with a story like this. The letter was reportedly collected by disgraced British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell years before the wealthy financier was first arrested in 2006 and subsequently had a falling out with Trump. The Wall Street Journal describes the contents of the letter, Eric, but did not publish a photo showing it entirely. They also didn't provide details on how it came to learn about it. Will this suit likely mean the Journal will have to show proof of the letters now?
Austin, I think the Journal has a serious legal issue here because in the article, and I've read it, it doesn't sort of hedge. It's not equivocal. It doesn't say, hey, Trump may have written this letter. He may not have. It says one of the letters is from Trump. So they've made that statement. And what's going to happen is Trump is going to actually have to prove actual malice. So he has to prove that the Wall Street Journal either knew that the statement was false and published it anyway, or that they acted with reckless disregard for the truth. And certainly there will be pressure on the Wall Street Journal to kind of like show their work and show how they came to acquire this information and why they believe it was true.
So Trump is accusing the defendants of defamation, saying they acted with malicious intent that caused him overwhelming financial and reputational harm. I also want to show this. For what it's worth, Reuters says, when Trump first filed his lawsuit in October 2024 over the alleged deceptive editing of Kamala Harris's 60 Minutes interview, he initially demanded $10 billion in damages for that case. Then in February of 2025, he amended the claim to $20 billion. Ultimately, as we know now, Paramount Global, CBS's parent, chose to settle for $16 million in July 2025. Would it be surprising if a similar strategy is being used here?
Not surprising at all. And, look at Trump's track record with these defamation cases. He tends to prevail. And it's not uncommon for a plaintiff to bring such a case and request, a massive amount like $10 billion. And then you sort of engage in negotiations. You realize what the exposure is on both sides and oftentimes reach a settlement here like they did with Paramount in that other case.
So Axios says this is the first lawsuit the president has filed against a media company while in office. Let's be clear. He's previously won other cases involving ABC News and CBS News. Currently, the White House is in a legal battle with the Associated Press over barring its reporters from public spaces. What's the significance, Eric, of a president sparring with the media in court like this? Does it feel like these cases could have any lasting implications on the dynamic between the media and the executive branch?
I think so, certainly. So Trump is no stranger to using the legal tools at his disposal to address disputes that he has. And he did that while out of office. He's doing it while he's in office. And I think what it's going to lead to, hopefully, is media outlets being more cautious, being more diligent about what exactly they're posting. It's really, they have an incentive to post things quickly and, it's sensational and they get all these clicks and what have you. But if they engage in defamation, if they harm someone's character with a false statement, then certainly they should be held legally responsible. And it appears that is what's happening now. And it could cause these media outlets to be, more reserved and more accurate in what they're posting about public figures, including politicians.
So Trump, as I've mentioned, has had success with cases involving CBS News and ABC News. But is there a world in which this comes back to bite him? Could bringing this type of litigation, have some sort of adverse effect on the administration in the long run?
Well, heck, if the letter actually is from Trump, then yeah, it could be terribly damaging. It would be foolhardy to bring such a defamation lawsuit if he actually wrote that. But what it can do, Austin, is it opens up the discovery process. Once you file a lawsuit, there's a process called discovery by which folks can be deposed. They're asked questions under oath. There are written questions they have to respond to. It can really pry into sort of the factual underpinnings of the lawsuit and the contextual information associated with it, including any relationship or absence of relationship between, in this case, Trump and Epstein. So, yeah, there is certainly some exposure, some risk with bringing a lawsuit that it could come back on you and result in the dissemination of some rather private information. So you got to be careful.
Knowing what little we do know about this case, does it feel like Trump has a good case? How does it feel like this will play out? Too early to know?
It's a little too early to know, but my apprehension is that he wouldn't have brought the case if he actually wrote the letter and it could be proven that he wrote it. And so, like I said, the Wall Street Journal, I think, was pretty brazen in the way that they phrased their article. And in fact, the title of the article asserts that Trump wrote this letter. They could have done this differently. They could have said, hey, there's a letter that we're being told could have been written by Trump, but we're not sure. And it'd be up to the viewer to decide, and we need more information. But they didn't do that. They were very affirmative in the statement they made against Trump. Now, that being said, Trump, as a public figure in a defamation case, has to prove actual malice. That's a higher legal standard to prove that the Wall Street Journal either did this knowing it was a false statement or with reckless disregard for the truth and published it anyway. So that is a hard standard to meet.
Finally, before we go here, the White House is asking a federal court to unseal grand jury records related to Jeffrey Epstein's case in an effort to put to rest this whole Epstein controversy. Let's also make this clear, Eric. Even if grand jury records are unsealed, and by the way, AG Bondi, you see it on your screen, says the motion has been filed. Even if grand jury records are eventually unsealed, let's be clear, that's not the same thing as releasing all of the DOJ's Epstein files, correct? Would grand jury records likely satisfy the public's appetite for more information?
Austin, I think it's a step in the right direction, but it is simply a piece, and probably a rather small piece, of the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of documents pertaining to this entire Epstein debacle, which has spanned decades. But that being said, I think it's a move in the direction of transparency. I think the court is likely to grant the motion. However, if that motion is granted and the records are unsealed, I think they're going to be heavily redacted. So I'm not sure it's going to include any identifying information about individuals involved. But I think Trump needed to do something to kind of pacify the masses who were clamoring for more information about this, due in part to his and folks in his administration's, bringing it up and kind of campaigning on.
All right. Where does this story go from here? What are you following next? What are you watching for next in the days and weeks ahead?
I'll be interested to see if these transcripts are unsealed, what they detail, and what it could tell us about other investigations, parallel investigations, because keep in mind, this will be the grand jury transcripts just from the Manhattan federal case against Jeffrey Epstein that was pending when he became deceased. So there's a lot more to that story than just what is contained within those grand jury transcripts. I'll be interested to see if there are any kind of leads into other information, other events, possibly other individuals that can be gleaned just from the contextual information contained within the transcripts, even if those folks aren't named.
All right. Well, we appreciate the context. This is something worth following. That's for sure. Eric Faddis, criminal defense attorney. Appreciate your time. Take care.